Hello there.
Now that I have your attention, I just want to say thank you for just clicking on this video, considering the fact that you have no idea what this game is or what this monster is. This video is just going to be going over the design of the monster and its history, which is named it's Jitters. And then the game's name is actually the Synthetic Nightmare. And the next video we'll do is actually going to be going over what the game exactly is. But I just wanted to make this first video so people could get more familiar with the monster of the game, considering it's such an integral part of the game. So I hope you guys enjoy the video, and let's get started.
Version 1.
This is version 1 of Jitters, and looking at it compared to the newest version of Jitters, yeah, I'm gonna tear version 1 to fucking pieces. Let's start with the biggest difference that you probably noticed pretty quickly upon looking at the two different models. The first thing is that his eyes are like bug-eyed. The reason I did this when I first made Jitters was to give him like a smiley face appearance. Like when I draw smiley faces on a piece of paper, I make them with like long pupils, you know? And so I was trying to give him like a creepy smile kind of aesthetic. It just did not work out, like, at all. And I just don't know why I stuck with it for as long as I did, because there's like one other version after this that still has it. It just makes them look goofy and just not intimidating. Like, it just looks bad. Another part of this model that doesn't make a lot of sense is just like how uneven and unnatural and just unsymmetrical it looks. The thing is, when I was making this model, this is not like a unique model for Jitters, right? Like, I didn't make this thing entirely by my own. It wasn't made from scratch for Jitters. And because of that, when I made this model, what I did is I just went online, grabbed a human model, and like Sid from Toy Story or whatever, I broke its bones, ripped it apart, stretched it, and sculpted it into this amalgamation of depression, insignificance, and just garbage you see before you. This model is just not good. Like the base mesh, like the red part that actually is like his body, does not look good because of the fact that it was not made for him. This is a human model that I somehow stretched and like just completely mutilated to look like this. That's why it looks so unsymmetrical and just bad looking. Then there are the other parts of this model, like you can see here, like his rib cage plates or whatever. They're supposed to be connected so they can actually provide, like, you know, protection from blunt force trauma, but in this version they're just plates, and so that wouldn't provide much protection at all. And then there's his skin, or what should be a lack of skin. The red part of his body is supposed to be like exposed muscle fibers, but in this version I didn't know how to make complex textures when I created it, and so it just ends up looking like red skin. And like I said before, it just looks like an amalgamation of just like red and white, like melted plastic. It just looks bad and unrealistic. And so, yeah, you can just tell the amount of bad decisions I made with this model, and you can just tell why I wanted to make more after this one because of how rough this one was. Oh my god, dude. That was hard to get through. The amount of bad decisions I just stared at with this model and just trying to like explain it to you guys was just so annoying. Alright, whatever. We're done with that model. Thank God.
Version 2.
This version of Jitters is way better, and the reason why we're in Blender view here is so you guys can sort of see it a little bit better, and I can sort of show you the little parts of his body so that I can sort of explain it better. This version of Jitters actually has a lot more going for him compared to the previous model. Firstly is his actual body. This part, is not like stolen from the internet. Like, I didn't just take it off of Sketchfab and just import it and stretch it and all that. I actually made this one from a little cube, not the starting cube because fuck that guy. So yeah, I made him from this little cube, and I was able to give him everything I wanted to. Like, everything I wanted to give him, I was able to give him. Because with the older model, because it was from, you know, an old human mesh, you know, it didn't look exactly how I wanted it to look. And with this one, because I started from scratch, it actually looked the way I wanted it to look. I know, crazy concept, but, you know, I was able to get there eventually. And on top of that, because this was a completely original mesh, I was able to give him a completely original skeleton, which, yes, did suck rigging, but it did give me the experience that I needed to, so with future models I had that experience. And on top of that, it just allowed me to give him animations that were like actually a lot more in depth and actually looked good. So, next thing I want to talk about is the head. The head, or slash face still has the long eyes. I know, it looks stupid. Give me a break. I was a big dumb back then. But it did take some steps in the right direction, making his face a bit longer or taller, which I've always favored like horror creatures with like a longer face. I'm not sure what it is exactly. However, this has led one of my friends asking the valid question of why the long face, and if you're watching this, you know who you are. Anyways, with him having a longer face and longer teeth specifically, that meant I had to redesign the jaw, which I'll talk about now. Now, what about his jaw, you may be asking? Well, the thing is, with his jaw, there were some problems. You see, with a human jaw, when it opens, it just kind of pivots, and you know, that's how you open your mouth, obviously, right? But Jitters had a problem with the human type of jaw, right? Because when he opened his mouth, there was a problem when he opened it. His jaw would clip into other parts of his body, and when he opened his jaw really wide, you couldn't see the bottom of his teeth really well, and so he kind of looked goofy because you just have these huge top, like, you know, the top part of his teeth, but you couldn't see his bottom teeth, so it just looked kind of goofy, right? Kind of buck-toothed, right? So I searched the web for a creature that had a unique jaw that would hopefully fix this problem, right? I don't know if you've ever attempted to try looking that up. It's not easy. So I finally found something, thank God. It was a type of eel or snake, and I'll try putting the image on screen if I still have it, or I'll probably just like draw what it looked like on screen. I'll find some way for you to be able to visualize it right on screen. And that was really good and allowed me to move forward with this hiccup of him not being able to open his mouth wide without it clipping through his body or his bottom teeth just like looking like they just disappeared. Now, you may be looking at this and you may be saying, that does not look like a natural jaw, and you're correct, because while it might be a natural jaw, I wasn't good at making natural looking bone back then, and so in the next model, he will have a jaw bone structure that looks way more realistic and a lot more natural looking.
Version 3.
There's not a whole lot different with this version of him, like concerning his body, like his muscle, like the parts of his body, they're like his muscle fibers, but I made him a bit more like wide instead of like super tall and skinny. This just gives him a bit more weight, and his new pose, like his new idle pose, helps with that a lot, but just making him look like he has more weight to him so that it wouldn't look like he would just fall over with anything more powerful than like a gentle breeze. Then there are his bones. His bones are a lot better in terms of the fact that they don't have veins on them anymore. Why I ever decided to put veins on his bones, I couldn't tell you. I was being the big dead dumb. I was being stupid, right? I do not know why I ever did that. So those are gone, and I just made some general improvements to his bones in terms of like just their shapes, right? Just making them look more natural, making them be able to move with his body better, because, you know, I think the other bones kind of had problems of like, well, if he moved his shoulders or his arms around, you know, would they overlap, or would they make it so his movement was restricted? And so with this version, I kind of fixed that and just cleaned them up a little bit. I also gave him a texture. It's not as good as later versions, but there's actually a bone texture now, so it doesn't just look like plastic. When we look at like the closer up images, you'll be able to see that. But his bones now have a texture, and they just look a lot more realistic. Now here's the good part. Here's the saucy part. What am I talking about? Anyways, what I was going to say is this is the part where his skull gets significantly better. The first thing is his eyes. They're no longer bug eyes. Why'd I ever decide to do that? I will say it again. I do not know why. But this time, way better. You can actually see him looking at you this time, so you don't have to guess. I'll put the image I found on Pinterest, which inspired this, because for the longest time I didn't want Jitters to have like humanoid eyes. I wanted to detach him from humans a little bit, right? So I didn't want him to have human eyes, and that's why his eyes were in this weird position for such a long time. And now his eyes actually look more realistic. They actually look like they belong on a living creature, and he just looks a lot more creepy, especially in the darkness. When you can't see the rest of him, you'll just see these two eyes just staring at you in the darkness. Another thing is that his skull, because of these new eyes, are a lot more natural. This looks like an actual like humanoid skull. His jaw bones also look a lot more rounded out and natural. So this is just a way better design when it comes to the skull. But you may be looking at this and being like, how does he open his mouth because he doesn't have any jaw muscles? Yes, that is something we will get into with the next version, because that drove me nuts. That drove me absolutely insane, so I did fix that in the next version, but just all around, really good improvements here, but it will get even better in the next version. Now we just have like miscellaneous stuff. There's not like too much to talk about here, just like basically just saying like it looks better, you know, like there's not too much to say. This is the version of Jitters that kind of cemented how I kind of wanted them to look to a certain degree, and just little changes about like his bones, just making them more natural, rounded, making them look thicker or thinner depending on which part of the body they're defending, and just little stuff like that. And then the biggest thing you'll probably notice is the little components on his back and head. Do you get to know what those are? No, you have to discover that. This is a horror game. This is an indie horror game. There are going to be secrets, so you're going to have to wait. I'm sorry. But yeah, just little small stuff, not a lot to talk about, honestly. But yeah, I think it's finally time to talk about the most recent version of Jitters, where there is a bit more to talk about, and I hope you guys like how he looks right now. At least how he looks currently, not like on this frame, but like the next version. You get what I mean.
Version 4.
Now, I'll admit, it's not a huge jump. It's not a huge jump at all, and it's kind of sketchy to even call this like its own version, but I've used it for such a long time opposed to the previous version that it's kind of became its own version. The biggest difference you'll probably immediately notice is sort of like the muscle fiber look he has and like the muscle tendons. It looks a lot more realistic to that, and I just think it adds just that little bit of spice that this model always felt like it was missing. But let's be honest, you can probably already tell the skull is where the differences actually happen for the most part, but I will admit this model is not like a huge jump in like quality or is like super different from like the previous version. But let's talk about the skull, because that's actually the cool part. First thing I want to talk about before I talk about the actual skull is just like the jaw muscles. Basically, they actually work now. The thing that was holding me back before is that I couldn't figure out how to get the mesh to stretch correctly. It just wasn't working, and I just wanted them to stretch so that he could actually move his mouth and it looked right? And so that was just something I was trying to figure out, and now it works. But now we'll actually talk about this skull part. This version is better for one specific reason: the eye sockets. Now, with the previous version, the eye sockets were perfectly round. No creature in nature has perfectly round eye sockets. They just don't. There's no animal has a perfectly circular eye socket, because it's just not how that works, because the muscle tendency, there needs to be a place for the muscle tendons and all that kind of stuff to attach to, right? To move the eyeball around and all that, right? And just fit everything together. So, I wanted to fix that with this newest version of the skull. So, I decided, let's try this. I'm gonna go find an artist online, and I ended up finding that artist named Kuro Xcho. I think that's how you pronounce their name. I hope that's how you pronounce their name. But basically, you probably know them if you're a fan of JJK. They made the devious ass picture of Sukuna rubbing his hands together, and that's the main reason I chose them, is because I just love that picture so much. So I'm like, hey, can you draw Jitters for me? Would you do that? And they said yeah, and so they made them, right? And I'll put the images on screen because they're really good, and I basically use their interpretation as inspiration for Jitters' new skull design you see here now, basically, where his eye sockets are kind of diamond shaped and his face overall is just more angular, and so it makes him look more predatory or more aggressive almost. And that's just, it's such a little thing, but I just think it makes him just look way better. So that's just the main difference between the two concerning the skull. There's not much to say here other than, like, I guess, like, the muscle fibers make his body a little bit more detailed when just looking at certain details of his body. That's about it, though. Like I said, version 3 and 4 are so closely, like, knit together that it's almost kind of cheating considering them, like, making them different versions in this video, but they're just barely different enough, and I've used version 4 so much more than version 3 that I just think that it kind of deserved its own version. But there's not much to say here from that, I guess. So yeah. Now I know at the beginning of this video I said there are only 4 versions of Jitters, and I know I lied to you, but it's for a good damn reason. And that's because version 5 is significantly better than any other version previous to version 5. And you can see that clearly that even version 4 doesn't even come close to version 5. Version 5 is just way more detailed, has a better model, better, texture, better attention to detail, just looks better in every way. So let's just get right into discussing that. Now I know this looks a little weird, but I am in this view where Jitters has none of his bone plates or head, so we can just see the differences in the sort of mesh between version 4 and 5. Now I know the differences are very apparent, but I'm going to point them out anyways, just, because I like talking about my own shit. Ooh, who would have thought? Basically, one of the biggest things you need to understand from Jitters' version 4 design is that from version 2 to 4, he actually had the exact same mesh for his body for version 2, 3, and 4. Now, that's great and all because it was his first ever original body designed specifically for him, but it had a lot of problems. One of the biggest problems is that it's really blocky. You can see that especially on his shoulders and upper arms and on his legs, there's just like this weird, consistent sort of pattern of just being really, really blocky. And it just doesn't look natural at all. Look at any sort of biology, and none of them have a blocky sort of shape to them. They're always really smooth, kind of have curves to them, right? Just stuff that makes them a lot more natural looking, right? And then one of the biggest things you can notice with this the model on the left is that it has these weird dips where the gaps in the sort of rib cage would be when he actually has it on, and it just, I don't know why I ever did that. It just doesn't look natural at all. It just looks really weird. And so for version 5, one of the biggest reasons I wanted to make version 5 in the first place was to give him a completely new mesh that was a lot more natural. You can see that in his chest muscles, they connect to his shoulder muscles, which is really accurate to real life. And then just his whole body is just way more rounded and curved and stuff, and just all these little details that make him a lot more natural looking. And obviously I paid attention to a lot of real life graphs of what the muscular system looks like on human beings and even animals. And so that was one of the main reasons I wanted to make a new version of Jitters, is because of the fact that his old mesh for his body, while it worked, it just didn't look like what I wanted it to look like, and it didn't look very natural. So version 5 completely wipes the floor with version 4 in that regard. Now I'm going to admit to something that's a little bit embarrassing. Despite using Blender for literal years of my life and dedicating thousands upon thousands upon thousands of hours to this program, I have never UV unwrapped a texture in my life, a model in my life. I don't know if that's sad or impressive considering how good my models look, at least to me, if I'm gonna stroke my ego a little bit here, right? So when it came to making this guy's texture, it was a little scary, and luckily I found a YouTube guide online, which I'll actually put up on screen because he made it sound way more simple than any other guide that I looked at when trying to make his texture. But there's not much to say here, other than just it was a hurdle and was just really difficult to get to work. But luckily, I got it figured out, and literally every single little muscle fiber you see on his body, I hand drew that shit. Literally every single little fiber, I had to hand draw that. Literal individual strands. That shit took literal hours of my life, but god damn it, was it worth it. And then I used a bump node modifier to sort of give the darker parts of his texture depth to them, right? So the darker the texture is in certain areas, the more sort of depth it will have. That's why it looks like you can see individual strands. That's not actually the mesh, that's actually the shader sort of making it look like it has a 3D effect. And again, it makes it look, say it with me, natural. Yeah, I've said natural so many times in this video, you guys probably want to shoot me in my fucking skull. Alright, let's end this video with this final sort of talking point, right? Something that's always bothered me about Jitters' design is the fact that despite being this creature of just pure mayhem, destruction, and just hell-bent on violence, despite being able to rip men limb from limb, sparing himself, just covering himself in blood, vitriol, gore, and just dirt and grime. Despite all of that, he is cleaner than my teeth after using whitening strips. Look at this goofy-ass motherfucker. Why is he so clean? He has no right to be so clean, and yet he is, right? So, for version 5, I fixed that shit. I fixed it, right? I made sure that nearly every single bone on his body had some grime on it, right? Either that be just some bits of dirt, like some grimier looking bones, to blood stain, like dry blood stains over certain parts of his bones, and just making him look a lot more grimy. I even went over like the white parts of his like muscle tendons and even made them a little bit more red and a little look like, make him a little blood soaked looking, right? And so that just elevated his design to a whole different level, just making him look a lot more darker in terms of like the themes of him just ripping people apart with his bare hands, or I should say bare claws, for whatever. I butchered that fucking sentence. And then also I gave him smaller eyes, which just makes him look genuinely a little bit more psychotic and just evil looking, I guess. Look at version 4's goofy ass eyes. That's why I called him goofy. His eyes just look goofy and unintimidating. So for version 5, I made them smaller, so it's a little bit more psychotic and intimidating. God damn, I'm tired. If you genuinely watched this entire video, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This was just a genuine info dump, and I hope people see this video, but I doubt many will want to. But if you did, thank you. I really appreciate it, and you're the type of person I'm looking for, someone who's just really interested in this stuff. So if you actually watched it, I really appreciate that. So stay tuned for more videos. I promise future videos like this won't be this fucking long. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and you guys have a good rest of your day, and just stay tuned. So yeah, that's all I got for now. See ya.